With Home Run Riches from the Maryland Lottery, I have the chance to win cash or to be selected as a contestant of the game. I can win $500 for every Orioles home run, plus $5,000 for a grand slam. Things can get pretty nuts! Make the right call and play Home Run Riches from the Maryland Lottery.
Good morning, Baltimore. It is Monday, May 11th, and thank you for tuning in to the latest episode of the Early Birds podcast. I'm your host, Matt Weyrich, alongside Ravens reporter Sam Cohn. Sam, we are recording here at the end of Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to your mom. Hope it was a good one. Do anything special today?
No, actually, I didn't get a chance to see my mom today, but funny enough, this was maybe like 2 or 3 weeks ago. I was on the phone with my parents and I was like, hey, maybe we could try to do something, get together, meet halfway, something for the weekend for Mother's Day. And my parents already had plans to go on their own vacation to Florida. So my parents are on a nice vacation this week. I didn't get a chance to see them, but I'll actually see my parents later this month. So it'll be nice and have a present wrapped shipped to home that they'll get when they get back from vacation. But it bought me a couple extra days before I needed to put it in the mail, so they can they'll get it a couple days late. But I had a chance to talk to them today, and they're relaxing by the pool in Florida, having a nice time. What about yourself?
I mean, can't ask for a better Mother's Day than that. Yeah, I
Right.
hurried down after the game Sunday afternoon to make a 7 o'clock dinner reservation. My parents made it at 7:02, so felt pretty good about that. No traffic, luckily. My family lives down in Northern Virginia, so not too far of a drive, but I was glad I was able to get a dinner with them. I hadn't seen them in a bit. They are also getting ready for a vacation, going to Cancun. Their 25th
Oh,
wedding anniversary is coming up, so
that's awesome.
super hype for them. Or
Matt, you had
sorry,
a very
I should get that right. It's 30th wedding anniversary. It's 1 year
that's
older than me. Should remember that.
that's big.
But
Matt,
yeah,
you had a very like stereotypical like mother-esque day, because mother is like the stereotypical mother, like you spend so much of your day doing things for other people and you're running around just constantly one thing the next, et cetera, et cetera.
yeah.
And we're recording this at 9:30 at night, and you've been just on the go since I think 7 a.m. So in honor of Mother's Day, you've had a very mother-esque day, if we can call it
Yeah.
that.
I could never be the rock star that my mom is. She killed it on every level. I'm one of 4 kids, so always running around, always doing everything. The most selfless person I've ever known in my life. So love you, mom. Thanks. Shout out to all the moms out there.
Yeah,
Y'all
shouts to the
are,
moms.
yeah. Where would we be without the moms? They are the true backbones of society in pretty much every way.
Let it be
Um,
known the Early Birds is a pro moms podcast. We want that on the
yeah,
record.
we
And
don't want.
speaking of, there's a new mom in the family of an Oriole. It's Anthony Nunez. Matt, you were at the game today. Can you recap a little bit what happened? Because not often you get to see a gender reveal on live television.
Yeah, Anthony Nunez, the Orioles
Was that a
breakout
good segue?
reliever.
How was that?
That was a great segue, dude. I mean, you're a
Okay.
pro. You want to just host the rest of the show? Honestly, I'll hand it right over to you. Yeah, Anthony Nunez, rookie on the Orioles, setup man who pitched the 8th inning today in the Sunday in the Orioles 2-1 win over the Athletics. And after he finished up his outing, which luckily was a clean outing, very important there for the moment, as he walks off, looks into the massing camera and says, "It's a boy," which was directed toward his brother and sister-in-law who had the child. So a really cool moment for the family, the Nunez family, to have that kind of reveal. It feels like a trend now across baseball. I've seen it a couple of times now. I think one pitcher came out, I believe it was on the Twins, was wearing blue shoelaces, and that was like the
Oh,
reveal.
cool.
They zoomed in on it. So it's starting to be a thing across baseball. It's just using your family members who play professionally to reveal the gender of your child. So pretty cool for him to do that, but awesome, for the Nunez family, pretty happy. And my wife was just telling me that like Mother's Day is the most popular day in the calendar to announce that you're pregnant to people, like
I guess that makes
because
sense, right?
yeah, you're
You're about to be
becoming
a
a mother.
mother.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's like the day. Also, you see family on that day a lot, so it's like the day to like spring it on them. So in honor of Mother's Day, Anthony Nunez announcing that his sister-in-law, I don't know if they have another kid or not, but having a child, which is awesome.
Well, congratulations to the family. I feel like I've seen way too many uh, gender reveal fail videos that I've kind of just lost all interest in the idea of a gender reveal. But this one was cool because when it's I don't know, when on TV your sibling or someone in the family is a professional athlete, like they nailed it. But I don't know.
I think the
I've
number
seen
one rule
enough.
should be no pyrotechnics, just no fire involved in a gender reveal. I think is the number one
No,
thing.
or
Like that,
like,
when things can catch fire or explode, I think I'm
yeah,
out on that.
or if you're, I guess if you're a professional athlete or a former professional athlete and you have enough confidence in yourself, go for it. But I don't want the former high school baseball player tossing up a baseball to himself only to whiff on it. The ball hits the ground and it
Yeah,
explodes and it's a color. Like that's not what I want to see.
it's 100% the kind of gender reveal that would happen to me. So we're staying away from any sort of swinging of the bat. That was not my forte. I was more of a pitcher. Um, anyways, Orioles. It was a bit of an up and down weekend, mostly down, to be honest, for the Orioles here, who lost 2 of 3 to the Athletics, dropping the first 2 games for salvaging a series or a getaway game win on Sunday. They now host the Yankees for 3 games this week before the Nationals next week, and then Tampa Bay Rays following series after that. So a couple of American League East division rivals on the horizon. Orioles playing an American League team here in the A's, who are currently leading the AL West. The American League, as we've talked about, very poor right now. Only a couple of teams over 500. And this win on Sunday for the Orioles was just their second win all season over a team with a winning record this year, which is to be this deep into the season now, over 6 weeks, and only have 2 wins over teams over 500. Not a
Not
great
great.
sign about this team, which has played very inconsistent baseball so far this year, both pitching, hitting, defense, everything. And as we talked about in the last episode, the self-induced mistakes have really added up for this team. I did think that Sunday's game was perhaps their most clean game that they've played in a while. You know, they had a great defensive play there. Lodi Taveras throwing out a runner at home. That was huge in preventing the Athletics from tying the game late. So winning on the backs of their pitching and their defense, not a recipe we have seen too often from the Orioles, but one certainly that they are hoping to have more of moving forward.
For sure. Matt, I don't want to call this series an inflection point because it feels like they've been knee deep in this idea of having an inflection point of the season for weeks now. And as they get to the end of May, it's going to be really telling about whether we can just kind of crumple up the season and throw it in the trash and call it. But I want to start with Friday because I felt like Friday said a lot about like them having the chance to really show something and then not being able to do it, and you get some of the good and some of the bad, and it felt very like indicative to what the season is. It was a Tupac bobblehead night, which just awesome, just so cool. Great
it.
bobblehead, and we put a
I got
video of
one
it.
myself. Yep.
Nice. I'm glad for you. And we put a video up of the Tupac bobblehead on Instagram. That's a pretty good giveaway as far as Major League Baseball giveaways go. But the point being that, as you said, this Orioles team has not played inspiring baseball, and it's candidly been hard to get people in the ballpark to watch this team play because they're not a very fun team to watch. They certainly have the potential at their best. They're an exciting baseball team with a really high ceiling. We just haven't seen that. So that was interesting to see how kind of Friday, it being a real chance for them to show something because the marketing, I guess you could say the marketing side of the Orioles got 40,000 people in the door for the Orioles to convince them that they should be coming back to these games. Orioles gave out 20,000 Tupac bobbleheads, as has been well documented. There were people waiting outside at like 2 or 3 o'clock for a 7 o'clock game. It was originally, I think, 15K, and they ended up upping it to 20K because it was so popular.
Yep.
Craig Albernaz said he grabbed 3 of them pregame. He was like, I had to grab them for my kids, but had to grab one for myself too, which is funny. So yeah, obviously there's a lot of excitement, but again, like that was their chance to say, like, they got people in. Here's your chance on a silver platter to convince this fan base that you are a team worth watching, worth following, worth paying to go see, and staying invested in. And they got enough performances that made you. I mean, Josh has written about this at length of like ride the wave of the ups and downs of this team. Like they got 10 strikeouts from Bradish and Pete Alonso and Adley Homer, but they still couldn't close out the win. And I wanted to mention this before I kick it to you, Matt. It's just a line from one of Josh's columns from this weekend where he says that he writes that Craig Albernaz might be new to Baltimore, but this particular problem dates to last season, and that being them just not being able to finish and defensive errors, et cetera, et cetera. And Josh writes, this is less a strange blip than a pothole that everybody sees and that nobody has properly fixed. And we're going to get into a lot of like what is this team's identity, but when you think about that game and them not being able to finish and just like what were your biggest takeaways, I guess, from kind of how that night started? You were there, or what were the vibes like? And I mean, throughout the weekend, like the Orioles got booed. I'm just curious what the ballpark felt like for you.
Yeah, the Boo Birds did come out on Saturday, but this Friday game, the pitching staff has been under scrutiny, and deservedly so this year. Kyle Bradish has not been pitching like the ace that he was expected to be, and he finally has his first gem of the season, goes 7 innings, 3 runs, 10 strikeouts, easily his best performance of the year so far. And all of a sudden the offense here has started to subside, and this is aligning with Taylor Ward drawing an absurd amount of walks, first player 40 plus walks in his first 40 games in Orioles history, which is crazy. Pete Alonso has been heating up. Adley Rutschman has been hitting the cover off the ball, but the lineup as a whole has not been able to get in sync. They lose 4-3 in this game. A 3-run 5th inning ultimately ends up being the decisive inning there for the Orioles, who the offense, chips away and makes it a 1-run game. I believe gets the tying run on second base there in the 9th inning and just isn't able to get that big hit and tie the game. So, this offense, as much as it's been about league average this year in most offensive categories, whether it's home runs, OPS, runs per game, they're hovering between the 10 and 20 mark of MLB in those 3 stats. So it's not like this has been a active hole for the roster, but it also hasn't been a group that has carried this team. And that has been on display here as the pitching staff over the weekend largely has a decent game, Shane Baz aside, decent series, Shane Baz aside. But for the lineup, all of a sudden, just not able to click, not able to hit with runners in scoring position, which was a hot button topic last year. Right.
Yeah.
This needs to be a unit that can carry the team to 2 to 3 wins a week. I mean, literally, like that's what the Yankees lineup can do, right? The pitching staff is awesome for the Yankees. They might have the best rotation in baseball right now, but this lineup on its own will win you 2 to 3 games a week because they're going to drop 7, 8, 9, 10 runs in those games. We just aren't seeing those kinds of explosive performances from the Orioles consistently. They had a couple of games in Miami earlier this week, or last week, that were indicative of potential for more from the offense. But they have those 2 games. They score 9 runs, they score 7 runs, and then they come out here and are scoring 2 to 3 runs a game. So definitely underwhelming from the offense throughout the series there. Even the game they won was a 2-1 win, so they needed the pitching staff to step up in that one. But overall, this lineup, it needs to be able to raise boats here for the rest of the organization. And so far, with Gunnar Henderson struggling at the top and the bottom of the lineup having a lot of question marks and inconsistencies, both offensively and defensively, still a lot of question marks about this group.
This is a horrible metaphor, but I'm going to use it anyway. It feels like watching this team feels like when you're trying to make a snowball and the snow isn't quite hard enough and you get enough in your hands and you pat it down and you make a circle out of it. And it's like you look at it for half a second and you're like, that looks pretty good. And then suddenly it all collapses. And that's all to say that the offense, again, there are guys have a good stretch of a game or 2, or you get a good outing from a pitcher that gives you a little confidence that it could be the thing that helps them turn the corner. And then it doesn't. And this was the conversation we had all last year where they were decimated by injuries, and it was certainly very different circumstances, but it felt like they were constantly searching for the thing that was going to help them turn the corner. And as we've talked about, you and I on this podcast, it's like, what is going to be the thing that helps them turn the corner? And we're just constantly searching for that. This is a very different and we think much more talented roster than what they had last year. Certainly their rotation is a lot more talented. It's night and day comparatively, but still, like it just feels like you're constantly waiting for the thing, and the second and third thing never come. You get the first, maybe you get the second, but the third and fourth thing never come, and that's why this team is so far under 500 and trending in the wrong direction. And
Yeah,
and
it's
why every day you guys, I mean, you're at the ballpark, you're in these Craig Albernaz scrums or talking to players or et cetera, and every day that seems like the same question keeps coming up is like, how much confidence do you really have in this team that you guys are going to be able to turn this around? You have to ask that every other day.
No, 100%. And it's when you see, like, when a team is playing poorly, but it's just because a couple of pitchers get blown up in a week, or the lineup goes cold, you can understand like why that'll happen throughout a season. Like, you'll go through dry spells. But when a team plays sloppy baseball on top of it and is giving away free runs to opponents, free outs on the base pass, getting picked off, things like that, that's when fans start to question, like, is this even a winning formula? And is why the team to this point has faced, I think, this level of scrutiny that it has. Obviously, there's history here with the fan base and seeing the way the last couple of seasons have gone. I mean, even 24, when they make the playoffs, everybody and their mother knew that the Orioles weren't going to be going very far the way they had played the entire second half, and they go out and they get swept by the Royals. So really, there hasn't been a high level of optimism among this fan base since the early part of 2024, and it's slowly kind of waned away over that time. And now this is an Orioles team that has to prove who it is at this point, and that is certainly a tall order for a team that is largely still young. They still have a young core, a getting older core, I like to say. But Samuel Basallo, 21 years old, Gunnar Henderson, 24, Jackson Holliday, who's coming back soon from the injured list, 22, Colton Cowser, still very much a young player. So you still have a lot of guys who are young players still establishing themselves in this league. But at the same time, the winning expectations have been around for a few years now. And, it's like that viral meme of the sliders when there's a button to turn on the offense, turn on the rotation, and turn on the bullpen. But as soon as you turn two of them on, the third one flips off. That's kind of the way the Orioles have been, to your point, this year. And I think you can add a fourth slider and make that defense, because the defense has been largely a switch that has been flipped off for this team for the most part. And, there's now thinking about trying Jackson Holliday at third base. It shows you just how dire things are defensively right now, as they're really trying everything and looking at all options here as they try to figure out how to turn the season around.
I don't want to paint with too broad a brush, but I did want to ask you, I've been thinking about this for a couple of days, and Matt, I wanted to get your opinion on it, because I feel as though there's probably a vocal majority on the internet, which means very little, that took a lot of stock in seeing Jim Palmer tweet that the Orioles are playing quote unquote woeful baseball. And to Jim Palmer's credit, he had added another tweet like, yeah, it's not good, but you know what fixes woeful baseball is hitting better, playing better defense, and winning games, and this team can do that. It's just that right now, I don't think he was trying to kind of lay the hammer, but what was your take on just hearing someone of Jim Palmer's ilk say something like that, or tweet something like that?
Jim Palmer's voice carries weight, not just among the fan base, but among the front office and in the clubhouse too. I mean, he's somebody who has seen this Orioles franchise, which for the most part has been a woeful franchise, to use his word, other than their golden era in which he pitched. So he has seen what this organization looks like at its best. Yes, this is a very different brand and different type or different era of baseball than when Jim Palmer played. Things are very much played on a different way these days, and the game is a completely different animal. But at the same time, he's been in the broadcast booth. He's been watching this team very closely for years. He knows good baseball when he sees it, and this is not what it's been so far. So, I think that sends a message to the organization that, it's not just the fans who are screaming incessantly in their DMs and in the mentions on Twitter. It is baseball people are looking at the Orioles and saying, what is going on here? Because, this reminds me a little bit, and I hate to bring it up, but the 2020 White Sox, okay, were considered the upcoming franchise in baseball. I mean, we're stocked with prospects. They had Lucas Giolito, Eloy Jimenez, a ton of guys up and down their lineup. It was considered Luis Robert, was supposed to anchor their lineup for years. And that team, makes the playoffs in 2020 and then just completely falls off after that and never made its full potential, despite the fact that they went through a rebuild and drafted all these guys high and signed some guys through international signing bonuses, and were able to develop a young, controllable team. just weren't able to turn it into a winning product. That is a possibility here. Going through a rebuild doesn't guarantee that you are going to become a successful ball club. And yes, the Orioles have emerged from the rebuild to at least be a team that can reasonably have World Series aspirations, have playoff aspirations. But at the same time, we haven't seen that level of play since the early part of 2024. And really, in terms of a full season, we've only seen it once. So, and that was 2023 when they really put it all together. And you look at that 2023 playoff roster, I was going through it. I mean, I think it's single-digit guys are still on this team now from that 2023 playoff roster. I mean, we talk about last year's team being different from this year. 23 is ancient history. So, there's a lot of guys that were integral parts of that team that haven't been on this in this organization for years. So it's a new team now. It's a different team with different leaders and younger guys that are taking on bigger roles than they had back then. But at the same time, man, it is no secret that the Orioles are underachieving, and this team, the desperation level, they're trying not to show it, and I can understand why. You never want to use the word panic, and that was expressed to me multiple times as I talked to a lot of guys in the clubhouse about this team's identity and their approach and things like that this week. And the words "no panic" came out of several players' mouths, several coaches' mouths, and I understand that. But at the same time, one more bad week like this, and they're going to be 10 games under 500 in May, and I don't know that they are going to be able to come back from that. It is certainly a tall ask, even in this mediocre American League wildcard race that they find themselves in right now.
It's very well said. It's a perfect segue. I think the biggest thing that you and I want to spend this podcast talking about, which is identity. And just to kind of give a quick couple years of history to recap, you mentioned that 2023 Orioles team. They win 101 games, and they were deemed that the identity of that ball club was they became the comeback kids. They led the league with 48 come from behind wins, and they were an exciting team to watch because when they got in a hole, they were never out of it. Come back a year later in 2024, and you start to think like they did it in the regular season. Now's their chance to come do this in the playoffs. And they were a fun offense. At one point, they led Major League Baseball in scoring, OPS, home runs. They put the ball in play. They put the ball over the fence. And I think those leading the league were like the midway point of the season. But you saw like a high octane offense was the core of that 2024 team's success. In 2025, as we know, the Orioles were a rudderless ship in tempestuous waters. That was just from start to finish a tough watch, and they never really found an identity that got them wins. Do you agree with that sentiment? They just never really felt like it clicked for them. These 2026 Orioles, and the reason I want to talk about this is because you wrote about this just the other day. You can read about it on the Baltimore Sun. The headline is, "What is Orioles' identity? It's still a work in progress." Craig Albernaz said on Sunday, "We have to play clean defense and come out on the other side. That's a big calling card for us." Obviously, him acknowledging defense. You mentioned guys have talked about don't panic. Just start with the 10,000 foot view. Like what is their identity here?
So far, it's definitely not defense. I mean, this Orioles team, it's what they want it to be is a team that hits for a lot of power, a team that, from a pitching perspective, has a rotation that will pitch deep into games and has flamethrowers at the back end of the bullpen who can shut things down. And that is a formula that they feel is, versatile. They can win games different ways. But so far, the lineup has underperformed in the sense that it's been league average instead of elite. The rotation entering Saturday, I believe, was the 29th ranked ERA in baseball. That was before this past game here. And the bullpen, while certainly been the best unit for the Orioles this year, had been struggling because they'd been overtaxed because starting pitchers were not pitching deep into games, and they were asking guys like Anthony Nunez, like Andrew Kittredge, like Dietrich Enns to either pitch multiple days, 3 times in 4 days, or get back from the IL. We need this guy in the bullpen. We need fresh arms. I mean, the roster churn on the bullpen side has been unbelievable so far. The rotation, which was hit with another injury this week, Cade Povich going on the injured list with elbow injury, forearm injury, not considered super serious in terms of Tommy John, but certainly going to sideline him. Yet another starting pitcher going onto the IL. I mean, you can talk about the injuries and how they have held this team back, and I think that is certainly valid. It was valid last year you can't talk about the Orioles' underperformance without acknowledging that they have been among the most injured team in baseball since the start of last season. That is a huge part of this.
It's
But
a
at the
similar
same time,
conversation we had with the Ravens too. It's just funny. Go ahead.
but
Sorry.
at the end of the day, like, you got to find good teams find a way, right?
Yep.
And fans aren't going to take that excuse, no matter how many guys get hurt. And they called for heads last year, and Brandon Hyde was fired. They're calling for heads right now. I mean, this is just the way things have gone with this team. Talking about identity, it is very much a work in progress because they haven't figured out what their winning formula is. I mean, I asked guys, I talked to, I think it was 8 different players in the Orioles clubhouse, and I asked them all the same question. When this team is going right, what does winning baseball look like? And I got almost a different answer every time. What is this team's identity? I got almost a different answer every time. And it's, it's coming together, right? It's the first month of May, or the 2 weeks into May. It is a long season ahead. They haven't hit their stride yet. There's a lot of new faces in this clubhouse. I get it, right? It's not supposed to be a finished product at this point unless you are a team like the Yankees, which basically ran it back this year with the group that it had last year, right? And we keep talking about the Yankees, but that's the team that the Orioles are chasing right now. That is the bar. So you're going to have to be compared to the Yankees. You're going to be, the little brother to the Yankees until you prove that you can do things your own way. And, this team was built from the ground up with position players being at the heart of it, and those position players have not, for the most part, carried this team in the way that they were expected to. And though the pitching injuries have certainly played a factor in the rotation struggles, but even the guys that are on the field, Shane Baz has been largely a disappointment this year. Chris Bassett, though he had a nice outing on Sunday, largely a disappointment so far this year. Brandon Young is thrown into the middle of their rotation. He's going to be starting the opener against the Yankees. That is not the guy that you wanted, kicking off your series against New York. He was probably your 8th starter going into the year on your depth chart. And now here he is playing an integral role in your rotation. So, hopefully they're going to get Trevor Rogers back. It looks like he's trending that way to being able to pitch in this series. That's going to be a boost. But even he had been struggling before he went on the injured list. So they are going to need this rotation, which, Josh and I talked a lot about. We were high on coming to this year in the sense of not necessarily that they would handle a lot of innings, but that they would be elite when they pitched. And so far, that just hasn't been the case.
You made an interesting point off air that I wanted to ask you about, which is that we were talking about identity, and you had said that you felt like the clubhouse has an identity and the on the field product has an identity for every team in the league, and that you felt like this clubhouse is sort of gaining more of an identity that just hasn't translated. Can you explain a little bit more, like why that is, what you feel like that looks like, or what the difference might be?
Yeah, I think a lot of guys have bought into the idea that they're intense. And I'll share that on Chris Bassett's locker today, going into his outing, which he wasn't starting, they had an opener, Keegan Aiken, on his locker, and I want to make sure I read this right, I wrote it down, was written the words, F hitters, get money, eat zins. Was just written on his locker, pasted on there on a piece of paper. Intensity is the word that I hear a lot from this group, and I think that this is actually a team where the intensity maybe has worked against it a little bit because these guys are competitors, they want to win, and they're trying a little too hard. They're maybe trying to press, and that's a word that has been thrown around a lot. It was thrown around a lot last year, and it's been thrown around a lot already this year, of guys wanting to turn the thing around in one swing or one pitch, whatever it might be, trying to be too perfect, trying to force swings when they're not there, all of that stuff. But the intensity level of this group, the amount of work that these guys put in is there. I don't think there's any question about that. So from a clubhouse standpoint, I think they're very cohesive. And honestly, even in conversations I've had with guys, on background, not using their names and everything, they've told me, like, man, this is one of the greatest locker rooms that I've ever been a part of. And they're already saying that, and it's May. That's great. But on the field, their identity, I mean, you look at a team like the Yankees, their identity is they hit home runs, right? That they've been leading the majors each of the past 3 seasons in home runs. The Guardians, they have a whole term for it, Cohn guards ball, where they play small ball. They get runs, they scrappy, they get them across any way they can, and the pitching gets them there. You have the Mariners, who their identity has been their rotation. Their rotation is dominant. Every single outing, all 5 starters, whatever they roll one out, is an ace. It could be an ace on any team, and that's just been the way that they've operated for the last few years. what is the Orioles on-field identity? That's the part that is still very much in question, that is coming together. And you can say that we want to win in all phases, but there needs to be something you can kind of hold your hat on with any team. What is your strength? And so far, the Orioles just haven't been able to answer that question. And I think that's indicative of where they are at this point of the season. And certainly something that they're going to need to figure out if they are going to try to figure out a way to come up with a winning formula here.
All signs point to that toughness, tenacity, them being like the kind of team that can do that. And I mean, you look at Albernaz getting knocked in the face and coming back out with a big scar on his face. That gave like James McCann bloody face connections. You kind of felt a little bit of that. You talk about what's written on Bassett's locker. Samuel Basayo, the play at the plate where he gets in a collision, he's staring Carlos Cortez down.
Ron Artest kind of energy I was getting from Samuel Basayo.
Yeah, like these Orioles feel like they have Malice in the Palace energy within them, and it's just a matter of can you translate that into winning baseball. And when you see Gunnar, Kobe Mayo fumble a routine play, you start to wonder how much that competitive. And I think it was Bassett had talked this weekend about acknowledging like guys, maybe he's referring specifically to the rotation, but that guys are pressing. Something we've heard several times over the last 2 to 3 years is that being a big part of their demise. But it does feel like they have to just like have some shit to you. Like it feels like this team has that to them. It's just not translating into successful baseball. It's what it is manifesting in these kind of weird one-off ways, not snowballing into winning plays. Does that make sense?
No, 100%. And snowballing is a great word there because a lot of these mistakes haven't been super related. They're errors on defense, and then it's wild pitches from the pitchers. It's getting picked off on the base paths. Things that are all different facets of the game. But when you have 2 or 3 of them a night, it really hasn't felt like we've watched an Orioles game where none of it happened. And even the 2-1 win over the Athletics, which was a largely clean win, Chris Bassett had a fielding error. I mean, I think at the end of the day, that one didn't end up costing them as much, but still, like, it is a team where you just look at them and like just play 9 innings of good baseball. Like show us what you're capable of when things go right. And you talked about the attendance for the Orioles in that the Tupac game. Over the course of this entire 3-game series, 94,231 fans came through the gates at Camden Yards. A prime opportunity, as you said, to show this fan base that you are capable of turning things around. And they go out and they lose 2 of 3, 3 games in a row, including the absolutely gut-wrenching series loss in Miami when Kobe Mayo has the throwing error to lose the game on a walk-off. It felt like all the air was sucked up out of this team there for 24 hours, and they struggled to come back from that a little bit. So you can't afford to waste games. You got the Yankees coming up here on Monday, and it is really just you got to figure out a way to pick yourself up on the fly. And I will say one thing we don't see very often is on day games there being infield work. The Orioles were out early on Sunday morning doing infield work. Kobe Mayo notably taking some ground balls at shortstop. Not that I would read into that. Or I have to say, I posted a video on, I believe it was Friday, maybe it was Saturday. Yeah, Friday. Pete Alonso was taking ground balls at third base. That was completely for fun. It was not actually the Orioles considering putting Pete Alonso at third base where he hasn't played since he was a freshman in college. Same thing with Colton Cowser playing first base in warmups on Sunday. They just needed somebody to stand in there. He had fun with it. It is a for fun thing. But Jackson Holliday playing third base in the minors is certainly something that I think is worth talking about.
Yeah, for sure. Just the point about infield work for the game, I was going to say, those fans that do get there early enough have seen, correct me if I'm wrong, and you might have more examples than I do, but it feels like every other week there's something weird going on in terms of pregame, and I mean that in a good way, where they're trying something new, working on something extra. They brought a freaking TV out to the infield to just give a different look. Like, it's not like they're ignoring the thing they spent all spring training and all season talking about the fundamentals. It's not like they're ignoring the fact that they've had so many defensive issues. It's just not always translating. And I guess to give credit where credit is due, we've talked ad nauseum before about Pete Alonso, not always the prettiest play, but is making those plays and just getting it done. That's not translating to the rest of the team, but it does seem like we've seen enough from this team pre-game or talk about it that like this is all stuff they're both aware of and addressing, and it bites them in the butt in the most unfortunate ways and times.
Yeah. And something I keep hearing from fans is like, why are they trying to make everyone so versatile and play all these positions? Everybody should be focusing on their one position. Who's the example of that we're talking about? Is it Kobe Mayo, who has pretty much exclusively played third base, done a little bit of first base, but like with Pete Alonso there, he's not going to play first. He's focusing on third. There was a reason he got moved off of third in the first place, but that is where he has put in the majority of his infield work so far this year. Gunnar Henderson exclusively at shortstop. Jeremiah Jackson exclusively at second base. Blaze Alexander is your utility guy. You got to have one, and he, maybe hasn't been great at second and is probably, if he focused on third base, would be his best position. But I think he's actually looked pretty good in the outfield for the most part too. So, this whole conversation of like guys need to be focusing on their one position is like they are. It's just so far, that
Yeah.
isn't translating to games.
You mentioned Jackson, and I sort of took you on a tangent there, but I don't want to brush over it. Jackson Holliday playing third base. What do you make of that? Is that a real opportunity for him? Just when Jeremiah Jackson's going to play second, or whoever? Just what do you make of Jackson Holliday?
Yeah, it's definitely a lot of layers to this. One is Jeremiah Jackson has played very good defensively at second base, and there aren't very many positions on the diamond right now where the Orioles are plus defensively, and first base is one, second base is one, and catcher is the other. That's kind of been it so far. So for the Orioles, they can't really afford to put Jackson Holliday there on a regular basis when he was, by defensive runs saved, I believe minus 12 last year. Now, look, don't get me wrong. What they're talking about here with Holliday, it's a trial basis. They're just going to see how he does at third, and they want to know, can he be an option there? Because maybe they want to keep Jackson there, or maybe if they are facing a left-handed pitcher and they want to get more right-handed bats in the lineup and put, Blaze Alexander in the outfield and Jeremiah at second, then they can put Jackson Holliday at third because he's a guy that they want to play every day, regardless of lefty or righty. It's worth considering. And the more I've thought about it, the more I think it makes sense. Where my concern lies for him is he's 22 years old. He's coming off of a hamate surgery that has been really hard, had multiple setbacks, questions about his power, dealing with lingering soreness, not to mention the fact that he's not exactly coming off of a great season. It was his first full year at the major league level. Some nice raw totals, 17 stolen bases, 17 home runs. 17 home runs was tied for the Orioles team lead last year, but at the same time, he was never able to hit for power and get on base at the same time. His first half of the season, low OBP, good amount of home runs. Second half of the season after the All-Star break, home runs disappeared, but the OBP shot up. So he wasn't able to kind of find that middle ground to be the complete player the Orioles hope he can be. And this is a really important season for him to take a step forward and make that continued progress. And now you're throwing a completely new position onto him when he was already a natural shortstop who had to learn second base. And the thing going from shortstop to second base, everything's flipped, but it's also a lot of the same footwork, similar balls that you're kind of going after. It's not too different of a position. Third base, the amount of hard contact you take at third base is hard. The way you have to plant and throw from deep in at third base is one of the more difficult positions one of the more difficult things you have to do as an infielder. And his arm strength was the question for him as a minor league player. And, so far, it seems like they are willing to see what he can do with his arm strength, the type of balls, that you make as a third baseman when you're moving in to field a bunt or something like that. That is a completely different play than Jackson Holliday has ever had to do at shortstop or second base. So these are new fundamentals that he is going to have to learn at this position. So you're putting a lot on a young player's plate to, figure this out. But this team is in the business of winning ball games, as I like to say. And if having Jackson Holliday at third base gives you the best chance of winning a ball game on any given night, considering where they are in the season right now, you have to consider it. And that's all it's about. It's not he's going to be made the everyday third baseman right away. It's about we're gonna try it. We're gonna see where it goes. I don't think there's necessarily a problem with that. I do just worry about potential butterfly effects down the line.
Yeah, I was just gonna say you gotta try what you can to go win games right now. And if that, like, as you said, if that makes the most sense, then that makes the most sense. And now they go see the Yankees, who we've mentioned the Yankees several times so far over the last half hour, and they are everything the Orioles aspire to be, and they're also the team that swept the Orioles a few weeks ago. Where's your head at kind of going into this series, and how bad could this get for the Orioles, and what would be your thinking if they find a way to win a few?
Yeah, it's definitely they're going to have their work cut out for them. I mean, they're going to be facing two lefties again in Ryan Weathers and Max Fried, two guys who, the Orioles are 0-9 so far this season against left-handed pitching. And Jacob Calvin-Meyer, my colleague, has a story about this in the Baltimore Sun today, as you all are listening to this, about the Orioles' struggles against lefties. So I encourage y'all to go and read that. But it has been a problem, and it's actually funny because they've actually hit left-handed relievers well, but for some reason, left-handed starters have been a problem, which obviously is more important than relievers. But also, it begs the question of, is this random? And they certainly have right-handed sluggers who can hit lefties hard. If they're playing at their home venue as opposed to Yankee Stadium, maybe that lends itself well to their pitching staff, which obviously is not as good as the Yankees is so far. So, maybe some more balls can stay in the yard that can help them. But at the same time, I think the talk of measuring stick series is out the window for these Orioles at this point. It is about prove yourself right now and win any way you can. And, the way that 4-game series went, getting completely swept, embarrassingly 29-run deficit over those 4 games in New York, you've got to come out here and punch back in some way, shape, or form. I think taking 2 of 3 has to be the minimum expectation for this team, especially with the Rays series looming next week on the road as well.
Win 2 and get off the ropes. Just start there. Otherwise, we're going to see continual woeful baseball, and this season's going to go downhill fast, and we're going to have some larger conversations. Because I felt like today was a good time to have what is their identity? How do they fix their identity? What does this team look like at its best as you've surveyed the clubhouse over the last few days, and these next 2 series? We could be having a very different conversation in 10 days.
Yeah, I mean, they can either be 10 games under or they can be back to 500 at that point. I mean, there really is a wide range of outcomes with this team. They're getting healthier, getting in potentially in the next week or so. Both Trevor Rogers and Jackson Holliday back for this group is huge. Ryan Helsley potentially could be returning to this bullpen as well as he works his way back from an elbow injury. So, this Orioles team, we haven't really seen it at its best yet in terms of health and everybody together on this roster. We're going to see what that looks like from a health standpoint here, hopefully soon. It's just a question of how quickly can those pieces step in and make the impact that they're hoping they can make.
I've mentioned several times that the most frustrating thing about the Orioles, they get 1 or 2 good outings, performances, and it doesn't snowball. So this goes against everything I've talked about this entire episode. However, I would be remiss if I didn't at least ask, Matt, as we've talked about so many times. I mean, they go play the Yankees and then the Rays. Who's the guy that gets it going? Who's the guy that people aren't expecting that can help turn this thing around?
It's a great question, and I think we've seen from the Samuel Basallo has really started to step up. I think in the middle of this order, he's been looking really good, and it started to lengthen that group. I mean, even with Gunnar struggling at the top, that 2, 3, 4, 5 really of you have Taylor Ward there, you have Adley Rutschman, you have Pete Alonso and Samuel Basallo. That has been not a murderer's row, but certainly a tough gauntlet for any pitching staff to navigate. I think it's how far can that go down, and my pick to click right now would be Colton Cowser. And I get that, he's 2 for 13 over his last 13 at-bats, but I do think that if you watch the ABs that we have seen from Cowser ever since Kansas City, he has started to take better at bats, working good counts, and getting good contact. And not all of them have been hits. Some of them have been loud outs. That happens. He hasn't been getting a ton of playing time either. He's kind of having to earn his way back into the everyday lineup, particularly with Leody Taveras playing well in center field. So we'll see how much Colton Cowser plays here over the next week, especially with 2 left-handers on the mound for New York. But I do think that we can't. Fans are ready to write off Colton Cowser and send him down to the minor leagues. I am willing to take another look here, see if we can get him a little bit of consistent playing time and see if the changes that he has made can translate into any kind of regular production, because I do think that Cowser has at least made progress towards putting some of these really, really tough struggles behind him.
I like it. I think you're 2 for 3 on me asking you this question. And
I felt like I had to shoot high with this one.
The guy at least doing something over the couple days after we did it. So keep an eye out for Colton Cowser.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to go ahead and wrap there. No Ravens today. Not much to talk about with where we are in the NFL calendar. But next episode with Josh, we are going to talk about the Ravens schedule reveal, which comes out on Thursday or Wednesday.
Comes out on
Thursday?
the 14th, which I believe is Thursday.
So maybe we wait. I don't know. We're going to figure it out. But later this week, we are going to talk about the Ravens schedule, which obviously the opponents are out there. But to know how it's all going to play out is certainly going to be a fun exercise as we look at what the path to a potential return to the playoffs look like for them. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Every thumbs up, 5-star review, comment, it all helps. So really appreciate that. And give us a follow at Sun Early Birds on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. We've been seeing some awesome returns on social lately. So really appreciate the love on there. And always, please don't be strangers. Let us know what kind of content you want to see, because that's what we want to give you. Sam, any final words for the good people?
Yes, I told myself I was going to mention this at the beginning of the episode, and then I forgot, so I figured I'd save it for the end. But my lovely girlfriend got me this little coffee mug, and it's a little late to be drinking, but I wanted to show you. It says Early Bird AM Coffee Club. I hope we don't get sued for showing this, but for those on YouTube, you can at least see it. So next time we record in person, I'll bring it in so I can drink a cup while we record. But I want to show that.
That is sick. I also got some stickers for my water bottle of the Early Birds logo from my brother-in-law. So
nice.
Throwing that on there. The merch is growing here for Early Birds. He's Sam Cohn. I'm Matt Weyrich. Thank you all so much for listening, and have a good one.